You joined us for Rain of Blood, and together we made it rain bigger and better than we could have ever imagined. So now, join us for a second blazing inferno of knowledge and exploration. You're listening to Rain of Fire, the scorching sequel event to Rain of Blood, where we're going to delve into the world of fireplay education and safety as we prepare for the upcoming Rain of Fire event. Join your host, Miss Kitten, Radically Dark, and Ember Solaris as we ignite your curiosity and stoke the flames of passion with discussions, interviews, and authentic insights from around the globe. Together, we're three flames united in one mission to make quality kink education more accessible and open pathways to conversation and connection about edgeplay topics around the world. But before we dive into these sizzling topics, a content warning. Rain of Fire discusses mature themes, explicit content, and practices related to BDSM and fireplay. So listener discretion is advised, and this is an adult-only podcast. Other topics may include mental health, trauma, consent, and more. So please be sure you're in a good spot to engage in these topics before continuing to listen. So, grab your fire gear, stoke the flames of curiosity, and let's embark on this crackling journey together. Welcome to Rain of Fire.
Hey, Fire Starters, you're back with Miss K in the dungeon. It's Friday. We made it through a whole week. We've had a great week chatting to some awesome fire guys. And today in my dungeon, I have Shadow. Shadow, welcome and thank you so much for joining us. I'm so excited to be chatting to you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Shadow, before we get into the whole kink side of things, do you want to just tell our listeners where you're from?
Hi, I'm Shadow. I am in the Detroit area, and that's in Michigan in the US.
Awesome. I love speaking to people all across the globe. It's so incredible that we can connect. Otherwise we would never have met. So it's quite a special moment for me. I always get super excited, and I do love American accents. You guys always sound just delightful. So less coarse than the South Africans that I speak to all day. So I've got a silly giggle already because you've got a beautiful voice. So welcome. And let's get into the kink journey side of things. So obviously you're not vanilla and you are interested in kink. How did that happen? How did you end up here?
I would say it happened because of a Rocky Horror Picture Show. I was living in North Carolina at the time, and I attended a Shadowcast performance of Rocky Horror Picture Show, and that was the first time someone invited me to a munch. I was, running around in my underwear for the Shadowcast performance, and somebody said, "Hey, there's a TNG munch meeting here soon. Here's my card, come on out." But I wasn't living in that city, so I never ended up making it back for the munch. But a couple years later, I was like, I really am interested in, maybe getting my ass beat for fun. And I started looking for munches in my area, which was still in North Carolina at the time. And I engaged with a munch group in my city that had popped up on FetLife because FetLife was indexable at that time. You could find it through Google. So I hopped on FetLife, and shortly thereafter I moved to the Detroit area. And actually my first party in the Detroit area, I met my now wife and mistress, who walked in with her whole posse of people, and somebody introduced me, and that was our happily ever after. I live in a 24/7 MS dynamic, and one of the things that sort of progressed our relationship from friends to lovers was fire. We would sit in her backyard and play with like fire wands and cups and flash cotton and just fun little mini scenes that sort of led to a deeper relationship. And now we're both pretty active in the Detroit area, and sort of just starting to branch out into a more regional and global perspective on kink.
I love that. And I love that that you found love through the whole thing. It's so nice to hear a happily ever after story. And I love that for you. That's really, and you have the most beautiful smile when you spoke about that. Your face just glowed. It was super cool to watch and to listen to you. Yeah, so let's go a little bit more specifically into fire. You mentioned a whole bunch of stuff. Like, I am not a fire kitten. I'm a kitten with sharp things at the end of her fingers. So this whole fire thing is really exciting for me. So you mentioned flash cotton, which I do adore, and I have had some experience with, and I love using. It's the one medium that I can use that blows my mind every single time. It doesn't matter if I've done it 55 times in one night. Every time I light it, it's the same awesome, yeah, incredible experience. And my body is flooded with adrenaline, and I am in packets of giggles. And it's just such a lovely medium. But you mentioned stuff that I haven't had any experience with. So you mentioned cupping. And I haven't really spoken to anybody who's spoken much about cupping. Maybe you can give me, I've done a bit of blood cupping, not to myself, but to a bottom once. So it's not like I have awesome experience here, but maybe as a bottom, you can tell me what cupping feels like, and what the experience is like for you. Yeah, super keen to hear.
Yeah, so cupping is a really interesting part of fireplay, that the fire doesn't actually touch the bottom as far as I can tell on the receiving end. With cupping, you've got a cup, you've got a fire wand, and you're like heating up the air inside the cup and then placing it on someone's skin. And the heated up air inside the cup causes a vacuum that pulls the skin up into the cup slightly. It from the bottom perspective, it feels like almost like being bitten, but less intense than that at first. The longer it sits on your skin, the more intense the feeling becomes. And the really interesting thing to then play with there is, okay, so you've got this pocket of skin that is pulled up into the fire cup or the glass cup. And when it is moved, then it forces like a release of suction, but then it grabs onto a different part of the skin. And so that's one of my favorite things to do with my mistress is if we're playing with fire cups, she'll put some on me and then randomly move them, which is a very like intense, it's a very intense sensation of releasing and being captured again, I suppose, which is really interesting in the perspective of like, what is that doing to your body? But then it's also really interesting in like the adrenaline rush and the gasp of masochism coming alive, I suppose.
Amazing. Does it leave a mark? In my head, it's kind of attaching itself, and the suction is going to cause a bit of bruising, but I'm not sure if that's something that I'm overthinking or if that actually happens.
Yes. So I come at things from a perspective of my blood doesn't have the clotting factors that it needs. I have a disease called von Willebrand's type 1. So it's the more mild form of that disease. But so for me, bruising happens with almost anything I do, including sleeping sometimes. So for me, fire cupping always leaves a bruise. That initial spot where it suctions on, it's going to break some of the capillaries just below the skin, and so that's what you're seeing as the bruise. And for me, usually this, if we're moving fire cups around on my body, the second location is maybe not going to bruise, just because the suction isn't quite as strong. You've sort of broken that seal a little bit, but it can, and even like the path between the two spots can bruise if you're really susceptible to bruising that day. So that's a consideration for, do you have clotting disorders? Are you taking aspirin? Are you taking any kind of NSAID pain reliever is likely to cause thinning of the blood. There's also actual blood thinners that people take. All of those things are considerations when you're talking about bruising, and definitely something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, 100%. And also then, like in my head, sorry, I'm just such a sharps player brain. Like I go into risk management file 100, and I just want to make lists. I would imagine that you're not going to keep the cup on the area for an extended length of time. So there's going to be a limit to how long that cup stays on, and then there's also going to be a limit to putting the cup back in the same area. I would imagine that you would then reapply the cup if you took it off to a different area, that you wouldn't keep reapplying it to the same area. Or am I imagining it? I could be wrong.
Well, there's a couple of things in play there. You would not reuse the same cup because you've already heated it up. And so if you heat it up a second time, you're more likely to get it warmer than is comfortable or maybe safe if you reheat the same cup. I've actually taken a lot of fireplay classes here in the Detroit area for the top end. So I kind of have an understanding of, in particular, fire cupping with the perspective of like what tops should be considering. And one of the things to consider here is the glass will continue to get warmer and warmer and warmer. So you don't want to use the same cup at all. If you're wanting to reapply, you need to have, enough cups that you can do everything you want to do individually. But, I think it comes down to, after that, it comes down to risk profile. If your risk profile says, I want to really emphasize one spot, and we've discussed all the risks involved, and we've, negotiated thoroughly, I think that's a decision for the bottom and top together to make. But again, deeper bruising and more bleeding under the skin is happening every time you do that.
Okay, and I suppose it also comes down to like, what does the play look like for you, and what is your intention in the play? And so it could be something more sensual or something more sadistic, depending how you want to calibrate it, and where you want to go with that. How long is a normal cup left on for?
I would say 5 to 15 minutes tops.
Okay. Cool.
I think that's a good average.
Okay, cool. And the feeling on your body afterwards?
It's interesting because fire cups are used as massage initially. Like, that's where we get the fire cupping play from, is from Eastern medicine. They would use fire cups as a way to like relax people's muscles. As a type of massage. So there's a certain amount of like deep tissue massage feeling after, so there's the bruise, you don't really feel the bruise as much as you see it. It's a pretty impressive, like the width of the cup bruise, but in the end, especially if you do like a bunch of them on your back, you've got, a whole back of little circle bruises, but your back might feel more relaxed afterward, if that's what you're going for. But if you're doing more of the like moving the cups around, you might feel more beaten up, for a lack of a better term.
That's quite cool.
That's a more masochist activity, I think, than just putting cups on directly and then leaving them and then taking them off when you're ready.
Is there fear associated with the play? So I've kind of seen a couple of videos of it, and it looks like the fire is generally out before it hits your back, if I'm understanding correctly. So they're not actually putting live fire on your back. But is it something that you felt a bit nervous doing the first time?
For me, it wasn't so much nervous putting for the cup to go on, as my mistress loves to play with, like, are you ready? Are you sure? And so that's where she has introduced sort of the fear portion for me.
Cool.
Like, I love a good anticipation, right? So for us, it's, she'll grab onto it and then she'll kiss me and then she'll be like, "Are you ready?" And and the whole thing is just so much build up and so much like anticipation that's more of how the fear is introduced for me.
Okay, awesome. I
in the
understand
little
that.
flirty play that we do.
Thank you for the clarity. I understand that. Yeah, I'm super keen to try cupping. I think what scares me most about cupping is the horror stories that I've read. Like I think the only and as a consent educator, I have used a fire story as like a terrify the newbies, because it will make sure that they are pay attention to what's happening, to sort of remind people to be present. And it was something that I did right in the beginning, because it was the one story that stuck in my mind, was a cupping gone wrong that I read on FET, I think about 2 weeks after joining FET Life. So I think it was one of those things that it can really go wrong if you're not concentrating. So when somebody like me who's never done this before is looking to bottom for something like this, what are some good green lights that I'm looking for in a top, and what are some good questions that I can ask my top, so that I'm making good choices in looking after myself and I'm aware going into the process?
Some green lights that I see are largely equipment based. I don't like to gatekeep any kink, but in this case, you need to have on hand a fire blanket, a person safe fire extinguisher, a bucket of water, wet towels. You need to have some safety equipment on hand. Not everyone keeps every single one of those things on hand, but personally, I have assembled our fire kit to have all of those things in it at all times. My wife and I are often hey, it's late on a Tuesday night, let's get some stuff out and play. So I always keep our play kits assembled and ready to go. So for me, green lights look like being safety focused. This is where the bottom needs to know what safety equipment looks like and like a checklist of safety equipment for this type of play. Because when things go wrong with fire play, they go wrong fast. So the other thing, and this might be a US problem, but the other thing is I would not recommend doing fire play unless you have a clear understanding of who pays for it if things go wrong. I'm sure you're aware healthcare in the United States is a mess. So there's health insurance to consider, there's copays to consider, there's deductibles to consider, not to mention a lot of that doesn't get applied quickly when you're talking about emergency rooms. So there might be out-of-pocket costs with going to an emergency room. The other consideration is how far is the nearest burn unit? How far am I going to be in agony before I get to the people that can help me, kind of thing. And those are all bottom considerations. Like, you should have a sense of what those considerations are for yourself before ever engaging with fireplay.
I'm gonna stop you there because I think you know the story that I'm talking about, and that story actually implemented a consent card in my community and educated hundreds of people thereon. And exactly what you're talking about now is one of the most critical things in all kink practices for me. It's not just a fireplay practice. When shit does go wrong, not if shit goes wrong, when shit does go wrong, what are we going to do about it? What is the plan? Because our healthcare in South Africa is crazy. It is like sacrifice a kidney kind of costs if you want to go to a private hospital, and a government hospital, you might sacrifice your life. So you can either lie in an emergency ward for 4 days before you get treatment, or you can sell both kidneys to go into a private hospital. So that's kind of where you're going. So you need to have a plan for this, and it needs to be discussed, because the one thing that I don't like in kink is the idea that it's safe, sane. It should be consensual, definitely. But for me, nothing of this is safe and nothing is sane. And it's going to go, it's like riding a horse. You're going to fall off at some point. So when you do fall, where is the hospital? Who is paying for it? How are we going to get there? All of these things, I call them the exit strategy. And I think every relationship needs an exit strategy. And I love that you're bringing it up. And I love that it's important to you. And I love that you're advocating it from a bottom asked question, because I think that everybody needs to be aware and have personal autonomy for their safety. And if you are going to consider kink to be safe, sane, and consensual, this is how you make it safe. These are the questions that you need to ask. And those things, like in my country, we have one great burn hospital. I'm very lucky to be super close to it, but we have one, and if you're 2,000 kilometers away from that, you're not going to get the treatment that you want, or see a plastic surgeon, or even have a plastic surgeon available at the hospital that you attend. So these are questions that are really vital for people to be asking. And just going back before you continue to what you're saying about the safety equipment, that safety equipment's great, it's fantastic, but you need to know how to use it. And both the bottom and the top need to know how to use it. And they can't be foreign objects. Like, it's great to go shopping and buy the shit, but you need to be able to handle it, pick it up, throw it around. So we have no fire experience, other than setting the felt on fire every summer on purpose to burn the grass, and that's a disaster every single time when we burn fire breaks. So for me, the first step in the whole fire process and the whole fire play was practicing with my safety equipment before anything was alight. Being able to roll I have a pony, being able to roll the pony up as a burrito in a fire blanket, like, that's super important. He needs to know what that feels like. I need to know that I can do that. He needs to know exactly, what he's going to experience in this time of stress, so that it doesn't trigger him anymore. It doesn't make the situation worse. He doesn't think I'm smothering him to death. I don't smother him accidentally to death with a blanket. So I love the things that you're mentioning now. And I think taking responsibility for yourself in the situation is what makes you an ethical player. Without showing up with that personal responsibility and believing that the top is responsible or going to be responsible, is a huge risk. And I think it's an unnecessary risk. And I almost think it's an unfair ask to expect another person to look after you as an adult. So I really love what you're saying. And I wholeheartedly agree. Okay, tell me more. I'm listening.
Sure. So I think the first, like we said, the first step is definitely for the bottom to be aware of what the safety precautions can be and should be. And then the next step is, I always look to what kind of education has the top had. The first thing I look for is, have you attended classes, which are not accessible to everyone, which is unfortunate. But I love that Reign of Fire exists and is providing this virtual platform for education, because I do think we need more virtual education in the world. So bravo. The other thing that I look for with fireplay in particular is not only what kind of general instruction have you received, but also, have you learned hands-on with someone? Have you been supervised doing this before? I don't want to be the first person that anybody does fireplay on, honestly, unless they are supervised by somebody much more experienced. I have been a demo bottom for my mistress teaching other people things, including fire, but I have not bottomed for fire with a new person that wasn't being supervised. So this is really a place where I think mentorship shines, is with fireplay. And I just really caution that even if you've decided that you're going to do fireplay on yourself as a bottom, you should be supervised as the first couple of times. I just really, and then after, so they've attended some classes, they've been supervised. Then the question really comes down to, do we have a good rapport as people? I think that gets missed too much in negotiations, is like, this top has something that I want, so it gets to the whole kink dispenser thing. This top does the thing that I'm interested in, so I'm going to set aside all my feelings about them and just engage with them in a kink sense. Doesn't work for me. I feel too much like I'm using people as kink dispensers, first of all. And then second of all, I just like to be friends with people that I'm engaging with kink-wise. So those are kind of my green flags, is, do we get along? Have they been educated? What kind of education have they sought out? Are they seeking continuing education? That sort of thing.
I love that. I don't have much to add to that other than, what does accountability look like to that other human? How does the other human take accountability? What are in the negotiation? Are they negotiating the hard points? Are they bringing up the risks? Are they mentioning them? And when I discuss the risks with them, how do they deal with them in that moment? Because I want somebody who is prepared to face them honestly. My example is for sharps. We always talk about blood pathogens. Although I'm tested super regularly, I play with a lot of people. My vanilla partner is not involved with blood, so I feel it's really important to keep kink and our private life separate, and my kink life shouldn't affect our private life. So I'm really, really strict about it. But even saying that, stuff can happen. So what happens if we do test positive? Where do we go from there? What does that look like to the two of us? How do we negotiate? How do we negotiate out of that? And I think it's important you mentioned it, you spoke about it, but you mentioned it in a different context. But for me, it's, how do we align ethically? How do we show up? At this current point, are we aligning? Are energies matching? Is there a real connection? Because if there isn't, we shouldn't be trauma bonding with each other. My kind of thing with kink is that this is a huge biochemistry reaction. This biochemistry is designed for trauma situations. We're now taking that and we're tailoring it to play for it. play with it for fun, but there are consequences that harm is going to carry. So if we're not aligning ethically, is this really someone I want to be trauma bonded with? Is this really somebody I want to have this deep connection with? And I will tell you, like I bottom quite a bit. I do some quite hardcore maso stuff. And when I do it with the wrong people, as much as I want to believe that I don't feel resentful, I do feel resentful. And, that's not a great feeling. The great experiences for me are the experiences with people who I have a friendship with and I have a connection with. And I'm super crap with new relationship energy. Like it's toxic for me. So I have a 3-month rule in my life. Like I don't bottom for anyone I haven't known for 3 months, because that gives me an idea of, do I really still like the person when I take the kink away from the situation? Would I go shopping with them? Would I go grocery shopping with them is always my question. Would they survive grocery shopping with me? If they would, then I generally will play with them. But I need to have known them for 3 months, and they need to still be around in that 3 months before I say yes to them, because I think that new relationship energy, that super spark, I find I can't navigate very well, and I always read it wrong. So if I get past the 3 months and that person sticks around, they're generally a good human. But it also gives me a chance to see that we align, to see that they're accountable, and that I can be accountable to them, because that's also a thing. Some people I'm better at being accountable with than others. Yeah, so I just I love that. I think what I get from you is that authentic. Are we really going to have a friendship over this? Because if we're not, I'm not sure this is worth doing. And I think life is short.
Yeah, I'm really picky about who I bottom for, in part because that a new relationship energy is a killer. I want to, and frenzy is another thing to consider, especially for newer bottoms, but also, for anybody who is susceptible to that bright, shiny thing syndrome, that if you are too excited about something, it can blind you to pitfalls. And that doesn't mean that it's wrong for you, but it might be wrong for you right now. And that applies to people, that applies to types of play, that applies to job opportunities, all of the things can be susceptible to that sort of frenzied energy. And I would say that October is not the time for me to be making decisions, because in my, personal rhythms, October, I tend to want to just blow my life up. And so, so it's important to be aware of your own personal rhythms. Sorry, my dog just woke up. And so be aware of your own personal rhythms and be accountable to your partners, as well as expecting accountability from them.
You're bringing some really cool stuff to Rain of Fire for us, and more from an for want of better words, an active bottoming perspective. I really loved that, and I really felt quite drawn to what you offered in that regard. And I'd really love you to tell our listeners a little bit more about that, and also maybe why it's so important to you.
Yeah, so I have been organizing a bottoms munch here in Detroit for about almost 3 years. And one of the things that I learned from doing that has been that bottoms attend a lot of classes from the top end to try and get these little nuggets of information about active bottoming. And an important thing from my perspective has been trying to answer as many questions as I can about the bottom end in the last 3 years. And I realized that I could just write classes that speak to all these questions that I keep answering over and over again individually, and just offer, a larger scale perspective. So I've written a class called Before It Gets Hot in Here, which is all about fireplay from the bottom end. And the idea is sharing the insights that I've gained over bottoming for fire for a very long time, and bring them all together in one place to offer bottoms a sort of foundational experience with fireplay. The idea is to offer negotiation tips, safety tips, and just general vibe check type tips. I don't think that there are enough educators in this community that say to bottoms directly, keep yourself safe first and foremost. And that is,
100%.
I think, the key thing that bottoms need to hear more of is if it doesn't feel safe, don't do it. And that is a person by person decision to make. And it is okay to say, hold up, we need to do X, Y, or Z in order for me to feel safe. And I think ultimately the point is to give bottoms the words to use to get their point across and to use their voice. And I think people in general feel more comfortable using their voice when they have the words. So I'd like to provide the words.
I love that. And I'll tell you, like, I'm a reasonably strong top. I'm reasonably strong in my community. I'm 6'6", so I'm quite a force in person as well. And I've been in situations where, as a bottom, I'm a little nervous to have my say, and I'm a little nervous to put the things on the table in case somebody doesn't respond to them the way I need them to respond. So I think what you're saying has so much value, because even as a super strong, independent human, I still don't always get my voice across. So if I'm battling and I'm not scared to use my voice in most situations, I think a lot of people are battling. So I think it's really important. For my own negotiations with my own bottoms, I like to do them weeks in advance. I think possibly admin is my kink more than anything else. But I like to do them weeks in advance, simply because I think there's two things involved with that. Number one is that then there is no frenzy involved in the decision, because somebody has then got time to contemplate. And I like to ask my bottoms to negotiate on a Monday. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but my first point of conversation is always on a Monday, and I always send my consent card through in writing, so that they have to deal with this on a day where their capacity is not thinking about Friday energy, and is not thinking about frenzy, and is not, that they have a bit of a reality check on the situation. Most of the time I'm asking these guys if I can stick 200 sharp things into them. So, it's really important that they are making decisions that they really align with. And it's easy on a Friday afternoon at 4:00 to say yes to 100 sharp things, but it's more difficult on a Monday. I also like to see where their capacity's at on a Monday, and how they handle that capacity. So for me, if the Monday is very hectic and they're having a very busy day and they're not able to do the negotiation side of things, they have two options. They're either going to give me back a form that's got one-word answers, or they're going to give me, hey, Ms. K, I can't answer this today. I'll get back to you in the next 48 hours when when my capacity looks a bit better, or my schedule's looking a bit better. And I really like that. That gives me a little bit of understanding of the person that I'm negotiating with, because they're not scared to tell me, no, I can't do this for you at the moment. So for me, that's a big, it's such a big green tick, and it's so sexy, because I want them to put real life first. And I think that if they can put real life first, then I'm prepared to go to 600 sharp things with them, because I know that when they make the decision and they give me the yes, they've been okay to use their no. So, so I just sort of, as a bottom, have got to a point where I kind of answer no now first to my tops, instead of answering yes, because I want to see how they take that no, because that's really important for me. It tells me a lot about the human that I'm dealing with. Are they going to hear me? Are they going to coerce me into making it a yes? Are they going to try and change my mind? Or are they going to respect that and take that as information and use that information to approach me on a different level, or to negotiate something differently? How do they respond to that? And I think that we don't do that enough. And I think if people can hear a little no, they can hear a big no too. But if they can't hear a little no, that for me, that's my super red flag. So that's where I've got to from my side. It also means that if I'm giving them a no that doesn't have any real cubic depth of value in my life, it's not super important to me, and they dismiss that, I know that this negotiation is not for me. They're not in the same, we're not aligning ethically at this point, and it's not worth continuing the negotiation for me. But I think it's super important that people can respect your no's, and that they're using that no as information and not as a personal attack and not as a failure or something like that, because it's actually not about them, it's about you. So that for me is a bottom end, and it's hard. And I love that you're bringing this out into the community, because, like I've said a couple of times today, even as a strong top, when I bottom, I don't always feel heard. So, if I'm feeling like that, there are a million other people feeling the same way. And they need to be more proactive, because without the bottom, the play doesn't work. Without my canvas, I can't create art, and the bottom is an integral part being the canvas. Mm-hmm. So it's really important for me that we're aligning. Also, if the bottom and I are not aligning, we're not going to make art. We're just going to make chaos, and then we're going to there's nothing beautiful is going to come from the situation. So really super positive about your classes, and really excited to hear more at Rain of Fire. Before I end this, I would love to hear about your favorite fire experience. What has left a lasting impression with you that you want to share with us?
I would say my favorite fire experience did not actually use fire wands or flash cotton or any of those big flashy fire things, but it did involve cigars. My mistress has recently, in the last maybe 3 years or so, gotten into the cigar scene a little bit, and we attended a class together about like the history of cigars and how to do cigar service and that sort of thing. And towards the end, the woman teaching that class passed out cigars and lit them for everybody, and then taught me how to be an ashtray in a way that would be safe for me and also comfortable for me. So she showed me how to like rest the cigar on my hand in a way that wouldn't actively burn me, although you can definitely feel the heat. And that experience has informed so much of our engagement with not only cigars, but also with boot blacking. I'm a boot black in this area as well. Has really informed how we engage with heat and fire and cigars all at once. And that was a really transformative class that I attended, and moment of that class. I'm very education oriented, so a lot of my favorite experiences have happened in an education setting. So that would be my favorite.
I love that. I absolutely am. I've been researching the cigar service quite a bit, and the one thing that I loved seeing it in your face when you spoke about it as well, but the history of it is really absolutely beautiful. And I think anything that comes with a bit of tradition and history for me is, I love that. I love the legacy behind things. I have 100 tools in my dungeon that are geriatrics and have this whole history that if they could talk, they would tell the most fantastic stories. So that for me, like when I buy an impact item or I look at a kink or something, and I think what I took from what you said there was your appreciation for the history of it. Almost made it more special. And I think that there is another lesson in that I really liked is the appreciation over appropriation of something that you are, if you understand its path in life and you understand where it comes from, that you're able to give it respect when you participate in it. And I'm super excited because the cigar thing definitely fits in with the fire. And I would love you to tell me a little bit more for 2 seconds before I let you go, because I want to know more now.
Absolutely. Well, cigars are a very, I don't personally smoke, first of all. I have asthma. So again, another like risk factor that I'm applying to my overall risk profile around things. But one of our favorite activities to do is I will toast and light her cigar. I'll get her a beverage, and then we'll sit on the porch and she will enjoy like the decadence of the cigar and the beverage while I boot black her boots. And that has become like a pretty strong ritual for us. I'm heavy into ritual too. So I love so one of the things that I love about cigars is there is a whole process to selecting a cigar and getting it lit and handing it off and making sure it stays lit. And then the act of being an ashtray is a very humbling one, in the sense of being somewhat dehumanized in a good way. And one of my favorite quotes from Slavecraft by Guy Baldwin was, I want to be this useful thing, this useful human property, I believe is the quote. And in that moment, I am able to sort of embody this goal for myself of being this useful human thing that is cared for so much that I won't actively be burned, but is being used to my fullest extent. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a super amount of sense. And I think everybody wants a purpose. And I think a lot of what you've spoken about today is making sure that we align, the tops and bottoms both align, so that we have a purpose together and that the purpose is going in the same direction. And when that direction is aligned, and then we are able to do these crazy ass things that we do together, the outcomes are just so much better. Yeah, I really loved talking to you. I'm so excited to have you on board for Reign of Fire, and I'm so excited for your classes because I think they are identifying 50% of our community who don't get to have their voices heard. So huge shout out to you for what you do in your community and for raising your voice and for being brave enough to put an application in with us. And a huge thanks for your time. And I've loved connecting with you today. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
I will. And to all my listeners, if you don't have a Reign of Fire ticket, I don't know what you're doing with your life, dudes. You have to get on track. A lot of us don't have opportunity to have in-person fire education. This is an opportunity to see some really amazing presenters, to speak to some really incredible humans, to ask your questions, and to have it all jam-packed into 3 days. So please get your ticket. Our early bird sale ends on the 5th. We have scholarships available. If price is a barrier to participation, please reach out to us. We are happy to help you with a scholarship. And to everybody, I hope you have an amazing weekend. And you stay lit and you keep it ablaze. And from my dungeon to yours, lots of love and kitten kisses.